What? I don't touch it. I'm patronizing.
Carol, look, I'm floating over the elephant. Here he comes. Adam, look. Adam, there you are, the circle.
Isaac in Hebrew means laughter.
Hysterical laughter. Oh, he would just cry and laughing.
And he used to laugh so much with his heart and his soul. He had a laugh that would have you laughing. You don't even know why you're laughing because this kid is just laughing with everything that he has, you know?
Hi. What you doing? Isaac. What's your smile? What's this? Oh, I see you. Oh.
We'll have to go back to 1986. And that year the doctors were on strike.
Basically, the doctors were a little bit on the negative side to look after people, and they really dropped the ball. And because they dropped the ball, it created this situation that was around us.
I had ulcerative colitis, but didn't know at the time. I kept going into the doctor over and over saying something was wrong, something was wrong. I felt horrible, terrible inside, and he just said it was going to get worse before it got better. And I said we were going to go away for the July 4th weekend to Ohio. We have church up there. And he said it's going to get worse before it gets better. So go away, come back, we'll see you then. By the time we got to Ohio, I was in full-blown labor. And then they rushed me to a hospital, and they assessed me there and said that it was way too early, way too early. He was only 23 weeks long.
And they air ambulanced her to one of their specialty hospitals, and that's when we had Isaac.
Isaac was totally normal when he was born. He had no problems, actually, except being born early. 24 hours after birth, he had an intracranial cerebral hemorrhage, a 5th grade bleed in the brain. They said that they couldn't even move him across the room, let alone operate on him. He was so fragile. So for months and months, he fought this battle back and forth. They finally sent him to Niagara Falls in November, and then he got to finally come home in January. They did tell us that there was going to be some issues developmentally, possibly because of the bleed. So then he started having a problem where his lungs were always backing up on him, and he was constantly in the hospital. They had thought he had cystic fibrosis because he was constantly had this mucus, and he was coughing and coughing. It was horrible in the mornings and in the evenings. And I remember the very last time I was in there, and I was so upset, and he's crying and crying, and they're doing the test, and the doctor said, there's nothing wrong with this kid. He's totally fine. And I remember praying and saying, if there's something wrong, let's see it so we can get it fixed. And then all of a sudden the doctor said, sit the kid up right away, because they found the top of his stomach was completely open, and when you moved him a certain way, all the stomach contents were going into his lungs. So he was slowly choking to death. He was, just before he was 2 years old, they did the surgery, and he was very tiny. I'd have to say maybe he was 12 to 15 pounds. We're talking small. He started having these small twitches and things going on in the face, and they figured for sure that it was seizure activity.
Isaac suffered from epilepsy badly, and before he would go into a seizure, we would have no way of knowing. Some people have a way of knowing. For him, we just never knew when it was happening.
So it was Mother's Day, and Isaac, of course, was on the same floor as we are because we need to hear him at all times. So then Rosie came and said, Mommy, Isaac's making a funny noise. Well, I knew right away. So I jumped up and ran to his room. He was up against the corner, so I had to pull him out so he could at least breathe. And we just figured it was just another ride to the hospital like we've taken 20 before. So it ended up being 5.5 hours that he seizures. And Mark is down there and I'm down there. They have all the doctors down there, any doctor who was available down there. They said that they had to pack his body in ice to keep his core temperature down, put him in a coma, and fly him off to Hamilton and hope that he'll come out of this okay. Mark and I got there, and he was in a coma for about 78 hours, and then he come to and took himself off life support. He was diagnosed with autism. He was a lot older. People that have autism, they need regular routine.
And with something you have to understand with autistic children is that everything has to do with rules and manners. If they develop something, a habit, that's it, game over pretty much. They got that habit for life.
And these autistic children, you learn them, and they're habit forming, and those habit formings is you got to work with inside the habit forming, and that it can be very difficult because you're not looking in the same way they are. They see the world differently, and you have to learn to see it.
Isaac couldn't walk, but he could swim. He could swim very well, and I actually have a video of him. They would call me from the children's center and say, today Isaac is in the pool, and I would be like, oh my goodness, like, is he going to be okay? He has a life jacket on. Okay, we're good. And then the week after, I got a phone call, Isaac's in the pool with water wings, and I'm like, water wings? He just had a life jacket. What's going on, right? So then the next week they called and said that Isaac swims by himself. I said, okay, I'm coming in. And he kicked away from her, and I'm watching this kid of mine who's floating like a cork, and he's above water, and he is like in this happiest time of his life, and he loved the water. He absolutely loved it. So it was nice to see that, you know what I mean, for someone who can't get around and do too much.
My brother Adam and I would sing "Row, row, row your boat," and he would laugh hysterically. Row, row, row your boat. He just loved it. And then another of his favorite was patty cake. I think patty cake was his favorite because always at the end of it we would tickle him and he would laugh. And Isaac in Hebrew means laughter.
Oh, he would just cry and laughing, and then everybody around us would just, the one would pick it up and then the other, and all of a sudden the whole room would go right into laughter, and we could, there was things we could do to pull up that kind of laughter.
And he used to laugh so much with his heart and his soul. He had a laugh that would have you laughing. You don't even know why you're laughing because this kid is just laughing with everything that he has, So towards the end, when he got really sick, and there was not he wasn't laughing as much, so. On the 5th of January, I went in to give him his dinner down in his room, and he just looked at me and just fell over. And I thought, what are you doing, you silly? And I went to pull him up because then he would normally start laughing. And I sat him up, he looked at me, and he fell over again. And I was like, okay, something's wrong. So his father sits him up and says, hey, Isaac, you gonna have dinner? And he looks at his dad and just falls over. So his dad just turns to me and Mark says, call 911. Okay, they did his hemoglobin, his blood levels right there in the hallway. His hemoglobin was 55. 55. I mean, a normal person my size should be between 100, 120, maybe even 140. So he's losing blood somewhere. He went in January, and by February, I mean, I'd had it like up to here, like every day they were thinking it was something else.
I remember visiting Isaac and waiting for the resident doctor, the specialist, to talk to us about what was wrong with him. They couldn't tell us what was wrong with him. And we sat in his room while he Googled, not a word of a lie, while he Googled Isaac's symptoms. And I looked at my mom and I said, if the specialist doctor doesn't know what's wrong with him, like, no one knew. He bounced from hospital to hospital to hospital, and they really couldn't tell us what was wrong with him.
A doctor pulled me aside, and she was a hospice doctor. And she said, I don't know how to say this to you. She said that Isaac wasn't going to make it, that they figured that he did have leukemia, and it was bad, and there was nothing more they could do for him except send him home. It was almost 3 o'clock in the morning, and the Lord said to me, go to Isaac now, just like that. So I went down to his room and I said, Izzy, Izzy, started talking to him, and his eyes were open and he was alive. I felt his heart right away. He was beating and he was nice and warm, and I just curled up with him, and 316.
You know, he died probably the worst death I've ever seen anywhere. And, you know, it was horrible. But God seen us through.
Isaac was, I guess you could say, the glue to this family. He brought us together and taught us many things.
Our entire lives were revolved around Isaac. And we had to basically change everything that we knew.
We knew of a few people who had children like this, and they all put them in homes. And we weren't willing to do that. He was our child, he was our son. And for 23 years, the loyalty and dedication to this little man was paramount in our lives. He changed everything. And God blessed us in the ability to, he said he'll never give us more than we can take. So God, you know, gave us a heavy trial, and when we couldn't take it anymore, God carried us.
He was our boy, and we took care of him. Through all those things and the things going on, it still was wonderful. Isaac, you know, he was beautiful.